Fear did not always look the way it does now. Before horror found its modern voice, monsters were theatrical, shadows were polite, and audiences felt safely removed from the nightmare unfolding on screen. Then a series of films arrived that shattered comfort and rewrote the rules entirely. These movies did not simply scare viewers, they altered technique, structure, censorship, marketing, and even what could be shown or implied. They turned killers into icons, transformed special effects into instruments of dread, and proved that terror could live in suburbia, in bedrooms, in grainy handheld footage, or even in the quiet smile of someone standing too still. Each one left a permanent scar on the genre's DNA. Without them, modern horror would not exist in its current form. These are 10 horror films that changed the genre forever, redefining fear for generations, and forcing audiences to confront nightmares that felt disturbingly close to home.
Paranormal Activity, 2007. Oren Peli crafted Paranormal Activity inside his own home, proving minimalism could generate maximum dread. Using static cameras and unknown actors, the film depicted a couple documenting escalating supernatural disturbances. The simplicity became its greatest weapon. Long stretches of silence forced viewers to scan the frame for subtle movement, transforming ordinary bedrooms into spaces of unbearable tension. The marketing campaign invited audiences to demand screenings, turning grassroots enthusiasm into nationwide release. Made for a micro-budget, it delivered enormous profits, reshaping studio investment strategies. The restrained approach contrasted sharply with effects-driven horror of the era. By relying on suggestion and audience imagination, Paranormal Activity revived interest in intimate supernatural storytelling. It solidified found footage as commercially viable and demonstrated that fear thrives in everyday domestic spaces where nothing appears overtly threatening until it is far too late.
Saw, 2004. Saw introduced a new era of horror defined by moral dilemmas and visceral endurance. Directed by James Wan and written with Lee Winnell, the film centered on elaborate traps orchestrated by the enigmatic Jigsaw Killer. Rather than simple slaughter, victims faced twisted choices designed to test their will to survive. The grimy aesthetic and non-linear storytelling intensified claustrophobia. Its shocking final twist re-energized audience appetite for unpredictable endings. Produced on a minimal budget, the film's financial success launched a franchise and sparked the so-called torture horror wave of the mid-2000s. Yet beneath the brutality lay philosophical questions about guilt and redemption. Saw demonstrated that horror could merge puzzle structure with cruelty, influencing editing rhythms and narrative reversals. It proved independent filmmakers could redefine mainstream trends and that audiences were willing to endure extreme discomfort for inventive storytelling.
A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. Wes Craven reinvented the slasher formula by dragging horror into the one place no one can escape: dreams. A Nightmare on Elm Street introduced Freddy Krueger, a wisecracking predator who attacked teenagers in their sleep, turning vulnerability itself into a battlefield. The surreal dream sequences allowed imaginative, reality-bending set pieces that expanded visual possibilities for the genre. Practical effects, from rotating rooms to body-stretching walls, showcased inventive craftsmanship. Freddy's personality distinguished him from silent killers, making the villain disturbingly charismatic. The film's success revived New Line cinema and demonstrated that high-concept horror could be both terrifying and commercially explosive. By merging fantasy with slasher brutality, Craven opened doors for creative experimentation. The idea that sleep could equal death tapped into universal fear, permanently reshaping how filmmakers approached supernatural threats within contemporary suburban settings.
Get Out, 2017. With Get Out, Jordan Peele fused social commentary with psychological horror in a way that felt urgently contemporary. The film follows a young black man visiting his white girlfriend's family, where politeness masks sinister intent. By weaponizing microaggressions and cultural appropriation, Peele exposed anxieties rarely confronted in mainstream genre cinema. Daniel Kaluuya delivered a restrained performance that amplified unease through subtle expression.
The sunken place became an instant metaphor for silenced identity. Balancing satire with suspense, the film achieved critical acclaim and box office success, winning an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. Get Out demonstrated that horror could address systemic issues without sacrificing tension. Its impact encouraged studios to invest in diverse voices and elevated socially conscious storytelling within the genre. It proved that true terror can emerge from uncomfortable truths embedded within everyday interactions.
The Blair Witch Project, 1999. The Blair Witch Project rewrote marketing and presentation for modern horror. Directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, it masqueraded as authentic found footage, convincing many early viewers that the events were real. Shot on handheld cameras with improvised dialogue, the film relied on suggestion and off-screen terror rather than visible monsters. The internet campaign blurred fiction and reality, pioneering viral marketing before social media dominance. Made for a fraction of studio budgets, it grossed massive returns, proving profitability did not require spectacle. The shaky visuals heightened realism, making audiences feel complicit in the characters' panic. Its ambiguous ending intensified debate and analysis. By popularizing the found footage format, the Blair Witch Project inspired countless imitators and reshaped independent horror economics, demonstrating that imagination and marketing innovation could terrify audiences more effectively than elaborate special effects. Psycho, 1960. When Psycho arrived in 1960, it detonated audience expectations with ruthless precision. Directed by Alfred Hitchcock, the film shattered narrative safety by killing its apparent protagonist halfway through, a move almost unheard of at the time. The infamous shower scene, constructed from rapid cuts and shrieking violins, proved that suggestion could be more terrifying than explicit violence. Hitchcock manipulated marketing as well, forbidding late admissions to screenings, transforming the act of watching into an event. The revelation of Norman Bates redefined the horror villain, replacing supernatural monsters with psychologically fractured humanity. Audiences realized evil could wear a shy smile and run a roadside motel. Psycho also loosened censorship boundaries, pushing what could be depicted on screen. Its influence echoes through every slasher and psychological thriller that followed, permanently altering how filmmakers build suspense, misdirect viewers, and weaponize vulnerability inside seemingly ordinary spaces. The Exorcist, 1973. When The Exorcist premiered, audiences fainted, vomited, and fled theaters in shock. Directed by William Friedkin, it grounded demonic possession in stark realism, shooting on practical locations and treating faith with deadly seriousness. Linda Blair delivered a performance so convincing that the line between innocence and monstrosity felt horrifyingly thin. The film elevated special effects into instruments of psychological terror, from levitation to the infamous head rotation. More importantly, it proved horror could compete critically and commercially, earning Academy Award nominations rarely granted to the genre. Religion, science, and parental fear collided in a narrative that felt disturbingly plausible. By combining prestige filmmaking with shocking imagery, The Exorcist legitimized horror as serious cinema. It expanded boundaries of what could be shown and emotionally endured, permanently shifting expectations for intensity, authenticity, and spiritual dread in mainstream film.
Halloween, 1978. With Halloween, John Carpenter carved the blueprint for the modern slasher film. Produced on a modest budget, it relied on atmosphere rather than gore, using steady tracking shots and a minimalistic piano theme to build relentless tension. Michael Myers emerged as a new kind of boogeyman, silent and faceless, embodying pure, motiveless evil. The suburban setting shattered the illusion of safety, suggesting terror could lurk behind any white picket fence. Jamie Lee Curtis became the template for the resilient final girl, redefining survival in horror narratives. The film's financial success sparked a wave of imitators throughout the 1980s, launching franchises and codifying genre tropes. Yet its simplicity remains powerful. By proving that suspense, sound design, and patient pacing could terrify audiences worldwide, Halloween forever changed independent horror and cemented the slasher as a dominant cinematic force.
The Shining, 1980. Stanley Kubrick transformed haunted house horror into psychological labyrinth with The Shining. Adapted from Stephen King's novel, the film emphasized atmosphere over explanation, using symmetrical framing and unsettling Steadicam shots to create spatial dread inside the Overlook Hotel. Jack Nicholson delivered a performance that blurred madness and menace, while Shelley Duvall embodied escalating terror with raw vulnerability. Kubrick's meticulous direction stripped away traditional scares in favor of creeping inevitability. The ambiguity surrounding ghosts and psychological breakdown invited endless interpretation, proving horror could sustain academic analysis. Its imagery, from the twin girls to the river of blood, became cultural shorthand for unease. By prioritizing mood, visual composition, and existential dread, The Shining elevated horror into art house territory and influenced generations seeking sophistication and fear. Horror evolves when filmmakers dare to challenge comfort, expectation, and tradition. Each of these films arrived at a moment when the genre risked stagnation, then violently pushed it forward. They redefined monsters as psychological, political, supernatural, or disturbingly human. They transformed budgets into advantages, turned limitations into style, and forced audiences to confront fears that felt personal rather than distant. From motel rooms to suburban streets, from demonic bedrooms to grainy forests, they expanded where terror could live. Their influence can still be felt in every modern thriller, every streaming series, and every experimental indie shocker. Trends may rise and fade, but the foundations these films built remain unshaken. Horror thrives because it adapts, and these 10 landmarks proved reinvention is its lifeblood. The genre continues to evolve, but it will always trace its lineage back to these bold, rule-breaking visions that changed fear forever.